Hello and welcome to this currently unnamed podcast, Puck on the Parkway. Hell is risen, the gates of hell. We will find out what to call this. But for now, we know for the fact that we are talking New Jersey Devils all the time here. It's myself, James Burley, Daniel Ravane, and Nick Guzman. You may know us from our coverage with the New York Red Bulls. If not, welcome to some more North Jersey sports coverage because it's New Jersey Devils time. It's the off season, but we've got a lot to talk about with hockey in the state of New Jersey, the Garden State Guardians, if you want to call us that. Daniel, I'll throw it over to you first, my man. How are you?
Hey man, I'm doing fine. I mean, we're coming off some big news in Devils hockey world, and my spirits have been uplifted since the season has ended for us. So I'm ready to get into this off season. This is a big off season for us.
It is a huge off season. It's crazy that we all sort of came together through the New York Red Bulls, and we found this. We've all also have this similar passion in terms of the New Jersey Devils, and excited to be on this with you guys.
Yeah, and I think if there was ever a time to start talking about the New Jersey Devils, I feel like 2023 might be the perfect time. We are in a transitional moment in terms of the Devils becoming a serious contender in the National Hockey League again, which is, I mean, for the first time in my lifetime that I can at least remember them being serious and going all in. And I think with that, we can get into our first topic, an indication of them going all in. Jesper Bratt inks an 8-year, $63 million deal to continue his time in New Jersey, despite rumors that maybe he wasn't seeing eye to eye with general manager Tom Fitzgerald, who said he's just beginning what will be the most busy offseason of his young general managerial career, excuse me. So Daniel, I'll throw it over to you first. 7.785 AAV for Bratter. He's back. 63 is back in New Jersey for the long term to join the likes of Nico Hischier and Jack Hughes, inking those long-term deals. There's some other players that may or may not join him. We'll talk about soon. But what does it mean to have the Bratman back in New Jersey?
I mean, for the longest time, it was just up and down. Is he gonna get traded? Is he gonna even sign here? What is he gonna do? What's his agent doing? I mean, obviously, we finally got it done. And speaking of 63, signs for $63 million over 8 years. I have the contract up right here. As you said, 7.875 AAV, but he just it's front loaded. So that's also a good thing. Obviously, Jesper is older than Jack. I think he's just a bit older than Nico, but he's going to be making 10 million total next year. So, but it keeps going down from there. So that's good. But having number 63 back is key because he was a key member. Even though he didn't perform in the playoffs, he was a big player for us going in the regular season. I'm glad he's back.
Jesper's such a huge part of this core that we've built, and even though I think he's prone to ghosting sometimes and sometimes being a little bit of a passenger when he's not necessarily on his A game, I think the value that he brings in terms of scoring and in terms of skating, and to get this contract done after it seemed like you were mentioning, Daniel, sort of you didn't really know whether the deal was going to get done, and now it is done. And looking at the numbers, I feel like 9.875, I'm okay with it, and I think it still leaves room to, we'll get into it later, but a potential Timo Meier contract, other unrestricted free agents that we can bring back. But I think Jesper Bratt was here at the start of this era, that 2017-18 season, him and Nico Hischier sort of started. I mean, besides those two, it's pretty much a whole different team. But to me, that's sort of the start of this new era that we've entered into. And it means a lot that, Jesper and Jack and Nico they're all locked up for the foreseeable future. And we've got a young core, and it's just the perfect time to be a Devils fan, to start the podcast and talk about it, because when you've got it as young a core as this is, locked up for as long as this is, I mean, there's, the sky's the limit at this point.
I think it's hard to say this is anything but a home run. Jesper Bratt inking a deal that was not only affordable for the Devils, but pretty accurately measures his contributions to the team. Back-to-back 70-point seasons. And Daniel, you talked about it, that limbo of will he or won't he re-sign has extended not just this offseason, but several. He's had the bridge deals now that have brought him to this point, but now making that commitment, to me, is a very strong indication that the New Jersey Devils are in it to win it for the long term, not just because they are linking up a group of players, but you talk about them front loading that contract. That shows that they understand where this player is and where he will be in his career. He's the oldest member of that young core, but he turns 25 in about a month's time. So he's got so much time to improve on his game. Yes, he was not brilliant in the playoffs, but I thought some of the backlash towards his play in the playoffs, oh, let him walk if he wants more money than Jack Hughes. We heard those chirps from fans a lot, and I thought that was a little bit harsh on him. It was just his second ever appearance in the playoffs, the first foray for this young core for the Devils, and you imagine they'll be back again and again and again. So these are the types of players you want to have committed towards, and you want them to want to play for your team as well. So Jesper Bratt, I think, adds only good things to this roster, and having him long term is a great deal. 6th-round pick. We love to remind everybody how late we took that guy in the draft. And boy, oh boy, is he the gift that keeps on giving. And I will talk about the Brat Pack because, look, we can go all day about his impact on the ice, but New Jersey could use a little more swagger off the ice, I think. And having the Brat Pack and Jesper Bratt inked long term is a good thing for the community, for the fans, and for all things black and red. And with that, there means some players are also on the way out. And that could be some meaningful players, such as the longest tenured Devil until a few weeks ago when he signed and traded to the Columbus Blue Jackets is Damon Severson, who will be wearing the number 78 now. I don't know what that's all about.
Weird number.
I was at his first ever training camp 10 years ago at his first ever preseason game at the Prudential Center. And he was one of my favorite, not just because, like, look, he was inconsistent here and there, but he was a guy who wore black and red on his sleeve, stuck through it with some of the worst teams I have ever seen play for the New Jersey Devils. And he was a trooper and ate a lot of important minutes for this team. So to let him go is it's another indication that this is a changing of the times, but it's also a player that you have to tip your hat to and say you were a warrior for this New Jersey Devils team. Nick, I mean, your thoughts on Damon Severson leaving? What does that mean for the team now? And how would you reflect on his time in New Jersey?
I mean, Damon Severson's been that one constant through, I guess we can call them the dark ages, from the mid 2010s, until pretty much last year. And he was the constant there in defense. And it's kind of a bittersweet moment. I'm really happy that he got his money. 8 years for Damon Severson. I don't know about that. It's a very long time for a guy like that. And his play on the ice, I think he's a little over criticized by this Devils fan base for his play. Yes, he's prone to a really, really bad giveaway every once in a while. And every once in a while he'll get caught out in terms of defensive positioning. But I think when you look at what this Devils team did last year, in terms of a third pairing D-man, look up and down the league, Damon Severson would probably be one of the best third pairing D-men, if not the best in all of hockey. So it was a luxury to have him on that third pairing. And I'm extremely happy that he's getting paid, but letting him walk, like you said, James, it's a signifying that times are changing in New Jersey. It's a little bit a shame for him that he experienced all the pain and suffering, and now just as we're coming out of it, he moves to Columbus. But Damon gets his payday. I think the Devils, are rewarded with that 3rd-round pick. And, the service that he gave them through all those years is sort of that one constant in such turbulent times. And then last year, he's a big part of the reason why the Devils were so successful, just providing that depth on the back end. So I think, for me, it's just good for Damon, good for I think it's good for all parties involved. He gets paid, Devils get that 3rd-round pick. And I think you can just reflect on what was a very long and not always a winning tenure as a New Jersey Devil, but it's definitely, I mean, he's been here since he was 20 years old. And that, that was his first 2014-15, I believe, was that first season that he played for New Jersey in the NHL. So I'm just happy for Damon to get his payday. And he was one of my favorites too, because he was just really the one of the only constants over this past decade.
Yeah, it is a bittersweet moment to see him go. Obviously, he's been here for 9 seasons. I remember him coming up from Kelowna Rockets, the WHL. Like he was supposed to be really good. Obviously, he has some good years for us. Obviously obviously he was in the worst time to be like a Devils fan for our generation. It's like those years were just terrible to watch. But I mean, he grinded through it. He got to this season. Obviously, he was playing third pairing as Nick said. In his career for the Devils, he played 647 games, had 263 points. I mean, those are pretty respectable numbers. And as you said, with his contract, 8 years. I mean, I guess that's what Columbus needs to do to attract players. But I'm glad he got paid. He deserves it for the time spent in New Jersey. And I wish him good luck, other than when he plays the Devils, because yeah, it's gonna be weird not seeing 28 on the back end.
Yeah, and good on Columbus for bolstering their back end, bringing in Severson and Ivan Provorov from the Philadelphia Flyers. But you you got to say that 8 years you're going to be paying a 36-year-old Damon Severson an AAV of over 6 mil. That's certainly something that the Devils wanted off the books. And I mean, from a business standpoint, that is probably for the best. And look at who's coming up now for the New Jersey Devils on that blue line. Seaman Nemec is probably the biggest name that we haven't seen yet at the NHL level, and one that we have seen a few signs of is Luke Hughes. Got a couple games in the regular season before playing 4 in the second round of the playoffs. So the New Jersey Devils should have that cover for him, and they also get what would have been an overly expensive contract off of the books. But with that said, Damon Severson, a big part of this team for a while. Tough goodbye, but an important one. I'll also add, in the locker room at the Prudential Center, one of the most approachable, nicest guys on that New Jersey Devils team. Such a great head on his shoulders, and I always didn't appreciate some of the flack he would get from the fans because it was undeserved in many cases. Yeah, he was good for a really bad giveaway or an own goal against the Maple Leafs. I was at that game. That was
It
so
happens.
bad.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
but you know what? I'm gonna remember the good times from Damon Severson now. And I think the best one is that overtime winner against the Rangers in January of this year. That was an absolute legendary moment, all-time Devils moment. Damon Severson belongs on the right side of New Jersey Devils history. And I believe that he will be remembered that way. But as for some other Devils who may join him on other teams this year, I think let's start with more defensemen. Ryan Graves, another player whose contract is up, and also his role may now be fulfilled by other players coming through the ranks. And again, Graves was an important player. This team was one of the highest plus minus defensemen in the entire NHL. This is another loss. Again, he struggled in the playoffs, particularly in that second round against the Carolina Hurricanes, who had their way with the Devils, as we remember. Is Ryan Graves a player that the Devils should make an effort at keeping? And if so, why or why not? Daniel, I'll go to you with this one.
See, it's a tricky thing, man. Before the playoffs started, I was of the mind of he was the one defenseman between him and Damon that you would bring back, just because he kind of stabilizes the third pairing going forward, especially with Luke Hughes coming up and what we saw him do in the playoffs as a first pairing defenseman. So I was like, you know what? Maybe you bring him back at like a middle contract, maybe like in the 4s if you could. But as I keep looking at it, you still have Kevin Ball. Where is he going to fit in if Luke Hughes makes this team? He can't be a 7th D going forward. So either he's going to be in the lineup or you got to trade him. He'll be on basically a minimum contract. He'll be under $1 million next year once he resigns. So maybe you say, Graves, you can go to free agency and get what you can and save that cap space and put it into other positions that you need, because obviously the defense going forward is going to be very solid based on who's coming up through the system. So maybe you use that 4.5 million and you put it towards another middle 6 forward.
Yeah, personally, I'm fine with letting Ryan Graves walk. I think he was, a real solid part of that defensive core this season. But I think beyond, Luke Hughes coming through, Nemec coming through, I think the biggest reason why I'm comfortable letting Ryan Graves go is just how well Kevin Ball played down the stretch and into the playoffs. I think if Kevin Ball wasn't really a factor and he was getting scratched in those games and he wasn't showing that he belonged to the NHL level, I'd be more inclined to maybe shell out some cash to have a sure thing with Ryan Graves coming back and just like you said, Daniel, just being a real steady presence on that third pairing. But I think with the emergence of Kevin Ball, you've got Nemec coming through. We saw what Luke Hughes could do in the playoffs. He's going to be electric. And I think Graves got exposed a little bit, in those playoffs, particularly in that Carolina series. Definitely did not play his best hockey, but he had a really good season overall. I think they probably will let him walk just because I feel like that money could be better, reinvested elsewhere. But, it's a real tough one because like you, Daniel, I was thinking that it was going to be between Severson or Graves to bring back. I didn't really see a situation where they wouldn't bring back either because I didn't. But now when I look at it, I think I'm comfortable enough with those young options, whether it's Ball or Nemec or Hughes, to carry the defense going forward. And, we still got Dougie Hamilton, John Marino locked up, Siegenthaler signed. So combine all those. And I think the need to re-sign Ryan Graves and use up more of that cap space, I think it becomes less and less necessary just with the emergence of the younger guys.
And someone who can fulfill that seventh D role that Kevin Ball is going to emerge out of and play more consistent minutes is a guy like Brendan Smith, who has got another year on his contract, a cap hit of over $1 million. I think it's 1.1. So he's not going anywhere. No teams are going to pick up that contract. And look, Brendan Smith was serviceable in those limited roles. If you're weighing on Brendan Smith to take more of that time up, then maybe you can talk about bringing in someone, a new face, bringing Graves back. But I don't anticipate that Brendan Smith is going to have that role, and I think he'll be good in the way that he's used. His veteran presence is very important as well. So I think the Devils' defensive shape, with or without Ryan Graves, is going to have plenty of cover and going to have plenty of depth, plenty of different personalities and profiles that should make this team a formidable opponent on the blue line. So I love the way the Devils' defense is going to be set up. Do I think that there will be hiccups here and there? Yes. Do I think that maybe down the line, especially with how many young pieces there are, will contracts become an issue? Probably. But if there's one thing that the Devils shouldn't have issues with right now, it's contracts, because even after Bratt, there's still 23 million or so left in cap space. And now they've got to proportionate that properly towards a guy like Timo Meier, who we should talk about now, because he wants to be in New Jersey. Mike Morial, who is a Devils beat reporter, said on SiriusXM today that he is anticipating the arbitration could go as far as 8 years for 10 million AAV. I think that's a bit high, but with the extra cap space the Devils have, they're in a position where maybe they could overpay for someone like Timo Meier, because look, he'll get paid anywhere he wants. So I think if the Devils really want to be serious about moving forward with this core, and Timo Meier adds something different that no other Devils forward does, I say you pay the man. But I don't know if it goes all the way to 10. Daniel, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I did hear that. I saw that discourse on Twitter today. Obviously, 10 mil. I don't think he gets 10 mil. You know what? I think he understands that it's up. He wants, obviously he's gonna want to get paid, right? But he also wants to win. He knows that you can't be like Toronto, and you can't have multiple players over 10. Obviously, we don't have anybody over 10 million. But going forward, we're gonna be one of the better teams in the NHL. Obviously,
We
I'm not
already
saying,
are.
yeah, exactly. Going into next season, we have the fourth or fifth best odds to win the cup. Obviously, like if we win the cup, that's fine. But it's a tough one. I don't think he'll ask for 10 million. I think he's smart enough, and his agent, obviously Claude Lemieux's smart enough to be like, yeah, 10 million. We're gonna stick on that. I think they'll get it around maybe like 9.25, 9.5. I think that's where it'll come in at 8 years. But yeah, as you said, like we need a Timo Meier. That's why we traded all these assets for him. We need him to stay. And if you can lock him up for 8 years, we have a new core four in the NHL.
And I think the precedent has been set by Jack and Nico and Jesper that if you want to be a part of this organization, this winning team, you might have to go a little bit under, the AAV that you might be able to get elsewhere, but that's what you sacrifice for winning and being a part of this team. And it seems like he wants to be a part of this team. So I think that 10 number is definitely high. I think, in my opinion, it'll probably end up being closer to 9. I think anything closer to 9 is a major win.
Yeah.
10's a lot, but for Timo and his skill set's so unique to anybody else on this Devils team. And I think, from a hockey perspective, obviously it's a guy you want to bring back, a pure goal scorer, a bigger body, a guy who can be lethal on the power play. And we saw it in flashes what he can do, after he got traded from San Jose. But I think the fact that Timo wants to be here, I think he definitely understands that. And you see it around the league. If you want to, hold these teams for as much money as you could possibly get, okay, you can do that, but then you have to play on
Columbus.
And on Columbus, and you're not going to win. And I think you can see how electric this Devils team was last year, how young they are, a young core that's locked up for years to come. And I think Timo's would be willing to sacrifice, a little bit of cash in order to be a part of what we're building here in the future. But I think it's really important that he gets re-signed just because of just sort of that X factor that he brings in terms of he's different than Jack Hughes, and he's different than Jesper Bratt and those kinds of guys in terms of his offensive skill set. I think he just brings a whole nother dynamic to this offense. And I think that's what we saw at times during his tenure here at the back end of last season. And I think if he can resign, like you said, Daniel, I think a core 4 is a great way to put it. 4 guys locked up for long-term deals, all of which are electric on the ice. And I think 10 is a high number. And if we paid 10, I'd be okay with it. But I'd also be like, okay, that's a lot, because like you said, we don't have anybody over 10 right now. I think that number will get closer to 9. And at that point, I think it's a win for everybody.
Right. We're talking about a 40-goal scorer here who hasn't had a good taste of playoff success since the Sharks went to the Cup in 2016. And that was a very young Timo Meier. Now we have a seasoned prime Timo Meier who wants to be on a winning team, wants to be a part of a winning culture. And let's not forget, is really good friends with the Devils captain. So there's a lot that is pointing Timo Meier to staying in Newark and staying with the Devils. Does the number have to be 10 for him to stay here? I think probably not. I think he would do it for 9 or something just a bit above that. The question I want to know from you guys, though, is because I see a lot now, but Jack Hughes is making 8. We can't pay anybody more than our best player. If we pay players more than we pay Jack Hughes, what's that say to him? What message does that send Jack Hughes? For me, I think that's a bunch of baloney, and I think that Timo Meier will earn the money wherever he wants, and Jack Hughes' contract is already ridiculously good that it would be very unfair for everyone else to have to measure up to that. So I want to get your opinions on this. I do think Timo Meier comes back. I do think it's going to be long-term, and I think it's going to be something that the Devils can afford. And I think the Devils can afford a lot, but I do think it's going to be within reason as well. So I'm envisioning 9.5 AAV or below for an 8-year deal, and I don't think it's going to bother Jack Hughes, who's making $8 million a year. What are your thoughts on that dynamic between the contracts now, if we are on the cusp of having a core 4 in New Jersey?
I mean, yeah, as you said, like that narrative sucks. Like Jack Hughes knows what he did when he was signing that contract. Obviously, he was signing that contract after 2 years of basically doing nothing. They basically gave him that contract in good faith that he'd become a great player. And you know what? He's exceeded that contract. And I bet you he thought he could do that. That's why he signed it. So yeah, like obviously we already have players that make more than Jack. Like we have Dougie Hamilton. He makes Dougie. 9.5. Like that's what you have to do for free agents. Obviously, we control Timo's like destiny, but like he could be a UFA in a year. So I would technically almost count him as a UFA because you got to give him close to UFA money just to keep him. But yeah, that narrative sucks. I think he'll be back. 8 years, 9.5. I'd be perfectly fine with that. But the closer, as Nick said, closer you get the 9 million, makes it even better. So whatever Fitz does in this offseason with Timo, I'm perfectly fine with, because he's shown that he has the track record to get these guys signed.
Yeah, I think that narrative is disrespectful to Jack Hughes, and it paints him as somebody who would care about that type of thing. I think Jack Hughes cares about winning.
Yep.
And I think he got a taste of that this season. And I think all he's going to want in the future is more of that. And I don't think he cares if Timo Meier's earning, $1 million or 2 million more annually than he is. I think, like you mentioned, Daniel, when he signed that contract, he hadn't really done, a whole lot at the NHL level. People were saying he was too small and all those kinds of things that have since been proved to be so false. But Jack loves this team, and Jack wants to win. So I don't think that narrative is real at all.
I completely agree. I think that maybe there is, discussion to be said about how do we value these players if they're making this, that, and the other. But these are contracts that were made in different years and different circumstances for different players of different ages and profiles who are in different contract points in their careers. Timo Meier is a free agent, so this is the type of move you have to make. With that said, another free agent of sorts that the Devils picked up earlier today, actually, replacing Andrew Brunette on the associate coach, former Canucks coach Travis Green, is back in the NHL, back behind a bench with New Jersey Devils. I'm going to be honest. I do not know much about Travis Green. If either of you know anything about Travis Green that you would like to tell the New Jersey Devils fans, that maybe about his approach to the game, because we know that Andrew Brunette was particularly important for the special teams and replacing Mark Recchi from the year before, who is an NHL legend in his own right, but needed to go because the Devils special teams were, how do I say this politely? Atrocious, just
Awful.
atrocious. And they were not great on the power play this year, but the penalty kill was an art form at many moments. So Travis Green played for 5 different NHL franchises, has been a coach for years, but now returns with the Devils. Nick, any thoughts on having this guy here?
I just know with Andrew Brunette last year, the talent that we had offensively did not reflect the power play that we put out on the ice, consistently. And, I don't, like you said, James, I don't really know a lot about Travis Green, but I think somebody who can, you think the amount of skill we have in our top 6 offensively. We bring back Timo, that's even more. I think like you mentioned, the penalty kill was good, but the power play and needs to more accurately reflect the type of players that we have on offense. And I think if Travis Green is the kind of guy that can improve this power play to be, top 10 in the league, then that'd be excellent. But I think this Devils power play last year was definitely better than the Recchi era, which was almost unwatchable.
It was unwatchable.
Yeah, all I'll say about Green is 2 years he had Vancouver in top 10 in power play, and I mean Quinn Hughes was one of the best power play guys in the league. So that's all I'll say about that. So if we can make that with Luke Hughes or Dougie Hamilton, I'm good with that.
And I will say this before we wrap this little piece up. He was part of that overhaul of the Vancouver Canucks last season, or now 2 seasons ago. This season's over. He was let go along with the general manager Jim Benning after an atrocious start to the season. They started to turn it around with Boudreau, but they still didn't quite capture much. You brought up Quinn Hughes. Maybe, just maybe, Travis Green lures him over here, and we get a trio of Hughes brothers in New Jersey.
Maybe.
That's a defenseman I would bring in to bolster the blue line of the Devils right now. But moving on, speaking of the back end, goaltending is still a bit of a question mark for the Devils. We were convinced going into the playoffs that Vitek Vanacek was going to be our guy. 33 wins, the only 30 win goaltender in Devils history not named Martin Brodeur. He was bullied in games 1 and 2 by the Rangers. Akira Schmid steps in and bullies the Rangers back. Says, "You did that to my friend. Look what I'm going to do to you." And he was nothing short of a revelation. But meanwhile, we've got waiting in the wings who we thought a few years ago would be our franchise tag goaltender in Mackenzie Blackwood. His contract is up. do we see any any path for him to remain with the New Jersey Devils? He's a player I've been very big on for a while. Injuries and bouts of lacks of confidence have curtailed his progression and development into a top goaltender in this league, and he is at this moment pretty far from being that. I see another similar scenario, perhaps to Damon Severson, where it's a sign and trade for Mackenzie Blackwood for something like draft picks. And, I thought Tom Fitzgerald knocked it out of the park with Damon Severson because he could have just signed. But the fact that they did the sign and trade, which gave Columbus the chance to get him for 8 years instead of 7, it also gave the Devils the chance to get something in return. I think Tom Fitzgerald may be looking at Mackenzie Blackwood as a similar asset for that. Nick, do you think that Blackwood remains in New Jersey? And if he does, what would his role even be? Because now the Devils would have 4 goalies if you don't forget about Jonathan Bernier. I don't see a way that Blackie comes back in black and red.
Yeah, I don't see a world where Mackenzie Blackwood is a New Jersey Devil in the future. I think when you're coming to the end of last season where Mackenzie Blackwood was the backup pretty much all season long when everybody was healthy with Vanacek starting, and then you get to the playoffs and Vanacek, like you said, gets goalied in the first 2 games. And then when they go to Schmid for the rest of the series and Schmid turns the series around and the Devils beat the Rangers in 7 games, I think that tells you all you need to know about sort of the end of the Mackenzie Blackwood era. The fact that the baton was turned not to Mac, but to Schmid instead. And Schmid he stepped up. And so many times this season, Mackenzie Blackwood did not. When he would play, I think what was that goals against? It was over 3.20 is the number. Not good enough, 893 save percentage. There were so many times this season where I was fed up with Mackenzie Blackwood, and I think he's shown so many signs in previous seasons that he could be that franchise goaltender, but injuries and all of that. I think it's sad to see that the era's coming to an end based on what we thought it was going to be, 2-3 years ago. But yeah, I don't know about you, Daniel, but I don't think I see a situation where Mackenzie Blackwood is in New Jersey come next year.
Yeah, I'll just paint the picture. Mackenzie's Blackwood's time is done. He's an RFA. So obviously they'll give him a qualifying offer, but they'll probably trade him. See whatever they can get. Also, you brought up Bernier. He's also UFA, so he won't be back either. Also, he probably will retire with all his injuries, unfortunately.
Yeah. The Corey Crawford.
Yeah. But back to Blackwood, he has all the talent in the world. Consistency and injuries has been his problem ever since he got to New Jersey. If he can put it together anywhere else, I mean, he could be a legit number 1. But you know what? We're not in the mold to try to keep developing a goalie like Mackenzie Blackwood. We need wins right now. We can't be like looking 2 years down the road like, oh yeah, he might be our starter. No, we need winning right now. So unfortunately, Mac, you're gone. You're gonna have to go find another team. Fitz is gonna find you another team, and you know what? I really do hope he becomes the number 1 somewhere else because he really does have that talent.
He's got the tools, and I think that's been clear since his rookie season with the Devils.
What makes it so frustrating?
Yeah, exactly. He was another guy who, a lot of fans had known and remembered from his days in the minors, coming up through the system. So yeah, only the best is what we wish for him. And it's just wouldn't be worth the risk to do a flyer on a goaltender like that, especially when you look at the goaltending situations from the playoffs. Jake Ottinger, one of the worst goalies in the playoffs, and Aiden Hill is raising the cup over his head. Maybe it's the time where you pay your goaltenders as an afterthought to your skaters in front of them. So I guess that is where we will leave you guys for this first edition of whatever we're calling this. Bratt is back. Meier, we'll see. Travis Green joins the Devils. Damon Severson is gone. Miles Wood and Ryan Graves. Some names to keep our eyes on. Mackenzie Blackwood as well. But that will do it for us. For James Burley, Daniel Rebane, and Nick Guzman, we will see you guys next time saying so long and let's go Devils.
See you next time.